Over $80 billion lost. A couple weeks ago, something happened. And we're going to go over what exactly happened, why it happened, and why it's not happening anymore. So, in an announcement of a draft policy through the National Press and Publication Administration in China, it was announced that there will be new regulations on gaming, specifically new rules for online gaming or online game companies or online games to follow. The new rules basically banned games from giving players rewards if they log in every day, if they spend on the game for the first time, or if they spend several times on the game consecutively. Effectively, the new rules for online games, MMOs, multiplayer games would have had banned giving players rewards if they logged in every day, if they spent on the game for the first time, or if they spent several times on the game consecutively. If these models sound familiar, it's literally every live service game possible, right? And you can't just drop this policy on a huge I think at this point, almost multi-trillion-dollar industry, just like that, and expect no repercussions. Tencent Holdings, which is basically the world's biggest gaming company, as said by Reuters, or gaming vendor provider, lost almost as much as 16% in their share value at one point, while its rival NetEase plunged as much as 25% after the announcement. And just between these two companies, almost $80 billion in market value gone. Of course, there were other parties involved, such as Process, that also lost value, basically bumping the value of market value lost to over 80 billion. And we're going to go over why they made these regulations. I've been seeing a lot of commentary recently from friends and also other people online that, wow, China actually made a pretty based decision. I mean, because these regulations would have addressed things like loot crates or kind of like the unhealthy push from game companies or games, whether we're talking about mobile games, we're talking about live service games, MMOs, to push the players into a sort of unhealthy behavior of microtransactions, right? And also engaging with the games in a rather unhealthy way. And objectively speaking, we're looking at this in a vacuum. Yeah, it is based. And some of the things that it was trying to address, I think a lot of gamers have issues with. However, we can't just look at this in a volume. Actually, on the side note, interestingly, Tencent Games Vice President Bigel Zhang said Tencent will not need to fundamentally change its reasonable business model or operations for games, despite losing a bunch of value. And why is that? Because Tencent, I think, has kind of tried to insulate itself from any potential policy changes in China, such as this one, by slowly, steadily, quietly acquiring foreign overseas game studios or companies, right? We have foreign assets such as Riot Games. They recently acquired Turtle Rock Studios, which made Back 4 Blood. So all these companies kind of help Tencent maybe soften future blows. And in this case, while the blow was huge, it seems Tencent is pretty confident in, in their future. And part of the reason why they're also confident is because the Chinese government has a domestic stakes in one of their subsidiaries. So the Chinese government is involved with Tencent. And it's pretty funny that almost immediately after the over $80 billion were lost, and it's a weird tension, at least in China, between the prevalence and popularity of esports figures and esports in general, or just gaming and the internet usage as well, versus the Chinese Communist Party's attempted control or tightening of all the sectors in China, including the entertainment and gaming industry. Notably, it's not new. None of this is new. Crackdowns on online gaming, as noted by Business Insider, in China are not new. In 2021, Beijing enacted laws which barred basically anyone under the age of 18 from playing games on weekdays and restricted them to 3 hours of gaming weekends. Now, the laws vary here at this point. It's not a general ban on just you can't play on weekdays. I'm pretty sure there's some laws that say you can play an hour on the weekdays and 3 hours or 2 to 3 hours on holidays and maybe the weekends depending. But it can get pretty interesting. It is funny though, however, after the $80 billion loss, that Feng Shizhen, who was basically the guy in charge of this announcement from the National Press and Publication Administration, got ousted after this horrendous market loss, right? He was forced to step down from his role as the publication bureau chief at that department. And basically what happened was, after assurances were given, after he was fired, the shares kind of rebounded for Tencent, NetEase, and so forth. Now, according to the South China Morning Post, his sudden exit is likely a sign that Beijing, or the Chinese government, will wind back some of the proposed rules outlined. And they probably will pull back on a lot of this, but probably come back next time and amend some of the things, but still push some regulations and restrictions through. And of course, people are asking, well, wait, that was a really base decision. Why are they going back on it? Oh, is it because of the money? I would say it is partly because of the money, but not just the money. As I said, Tencent is involved with the Chinese government, but also there are political implications here as a result of this decision. And and we'll talk about that here pretty soon. I just kind of want to talk a bit more about what exactly the new rules were, because that was kind of a bit more summary. So the new rules would have banned companies from offering incentives to people who play video games or make in-game purchases each day. Other restrictions include limits on how often players can add money to online money accounts called wallets. The government also warned of the dangers of irrational behaviors. It says it can lead to gaming compulsions. And China has had this kind of like public fight or the Chinese government specifically has had this public fight with the perception of internet addiction or gaming addiction, which is part of the reasons why they have implemented laws in the past. And the new rules also will call for companies to create warning messages to be sent to users who seem to be showing irrational playing behavior. So there will be tracking involved as well. And of course, user privacy is involved, and regulations will require game publishers to store their servers within China. And the article here says in an effort to protect user privacy, but I think a lot of us know that's not exactly the concern here for the Chinese government. So in here, we can actually also see some of the past examples of crackdowns on the entertainment, technology, and gaming industry. I mean, it's not the fact that the Chinese government or Chinese Communist Party is afraid of just losing money. They have been very aggressive in the past with billionaires, millionaires. They're not afraid to crack down and lose money or lose just market value. It just comes out of this policy just comes at a rather interesting time, at least for China, with some of its internal politics and internal situations in some of the regions, and also the external politics in which China is dealing with a post kind of Ukraine war world. And they don't want to, I guess, shake the boat too much. And if we look at some of the things Feng, the guy who got fired for basically heading this proposal, has said in the past, from an article in 2020 in particular, he mentions that while yes, that there is basically reasons as to why he and the others want to tackle gaming activities or gaming behaviors or behaviors associated with the internet. He cites things like compulsive behaviors and stuff like that. He is also very adamant on content control, and of course, as we all know, when it comes to online gaming, what happens when you meet other people, right? And it's just kind of interesting that one of the things he does mention in this article is something he calls or labels historical nihilism or nihilistic history. And this is actually parroting the words of Xi Jinping, the current basically total leader of the Chinese Communist Party right now. And Xi Jinping has in the past often cited the Soviet Union as a sort of warning story, like a story for China to heed, arguing that it collapsed in part because its leaders failed to eradicate historical nihilism. Basically, critical accounts of purges, political persecution and missteps that corroded faith in the communist cause. He's basically referring to the time period after Stalin, including the secret speech and the couple of regimes after Khrushchev, where essentially Stalinism and everything that came with it was broken down. And he basically sees the Soviet Union and what it did after Stalin as not a very good thing to follow as an example. So in summary, that's basically anything that does not, I guess, fit well with the Chinese Communist Party's narrative of either Chinese history or, I guess, future circumstances that China will face. So yes, on the surface, gamers have looked at this news as like, oh, you know, the Chinese Communist Party maybe misled, but sort of not misled, maybe onto something here, but then they pull back because of money. Well, no, not exactly. It's got a lot to do with not just some of the money involved here, but a lot of the politics involved with the Chinese Communist Party and what's going on in China, and how they perceive what is going on in China. So I think this is really interesting to kind of go over. It's for the most part right now subsided from start to finish. It has been quite interesting to observe. At first, it was like, wow, they're really going to go ahead with this. And then, of course, they pulled back on a lot of this. And they're actually kind of, it seems, adjusting for a future announcement as well. So we'll see what happens. It's highly doubtful that they'll do something like this again anytime soon. But who knows?